What's up, folks? How are you? And I'm seeing that many are complaining about Gregg Berhalter, and of course, I get it. I would too. I understand the pain that many must be going through right now. That you see a coach that really had no vision, but a coach ends up sometimes being a reflection of the people that lead him because the people that lead him usually want someone that's in charge that is basically like them or willing to follow the path that they're looking to set out. Many would be happy if he gets sacked. That's, you know what? That's the easier answer. People are going to say, oh, yeah, but it's the easier answer. Easier, I say, because it's easy to sack one person and then pay him off because he still has 2 years left on his contract. That's what people tend to not understand. Okay, fine. Let's say they are about to sack him. Let's say they're about to get rid of him. They got to also negotiate an out. Does U.S. Soccer have that money? Or willing to spend it? Those are two different things. According to them, they might not have it, but basically, if you look at their earnings, you would probably end up saying, no, they have the money. They just don't believe they have the money to spend it. Because on top of the lawsuits, on top of everything else that they have going on, well, it ends up being that, right? Number one. Number two, like I said, it's easier because it's a problem you can get rid of quickly. Now, I talk to you, U.S. fan. Is the problem the coach or is the problem the culture? Is the problem the coach or is the problem the leadership? Like I said, the coach is the easiest thing to get rid of because you get rid of one person. You can't get rid of an entire team because it's 23 players, 26 or whatever. In the national team case, it is because you end up not calling them ever again and bringing in a new batch of players. That's easier in terms of the national team. So yeah, it does end up being that. Now, do you want to get rid of 26 players? No, I don't think that there's a need for that. Is the problem the coach or is the problem the culture? Because now if we get into the problem of the culture, then you have to get rid of everybody. You have to get rid of the president. You have to get rid of the committees. You have to get rid of the people that run the game. You have to get rid of the people that have influence in the game. You have to get rid of the people underneath them that do have a lot of influence, if you will, and also have a lot of clout in terms of what the game is about. You have to get rid of all that in order to change the culture. Now, my question to you again, is it the coach or is it the culture? Start looking at it a little bit deeper. And I know that it's the coach at times because he's the face of what's going on. He's the face of the team when the team loses or gets eliminated from a tournament. And at the same time, he's the face of the team when they win. Remember a few months back, they were a great team because they won the Nations League, right? What they want you to believe is that, well, things will go by, things will end, things will, will pass by. All of a sudden, CONCACAF goes back into an international window in September or whatever it is. They start pouncing and beating down on CONCACAF teams or lesser teams in that window, and everything's back to normal. Maybe they're just waiting for that. Keep in mind, the more and more you act, the more and more you read into it, the more and more you get into it, the more and more it sounds like Mexico. Okay, let's change the coach. But then the same people stay in charge. And then you have another failure. And then all of a sudden, what happens then? Then another coach comes in, and another coach comes in, another coach comes in. The more the U.S. say things and act, and they sound more like Mexico. Although maybe they're a little bit more cautious in terms of their coaching decisions. Let's be completely real about that. Is that really it? Is that really the direction you want to head? You want to head Mexico's direction? You're already there. You're basically parallel with Mexico in terms of the direction and the vision going into a World Cup that you both are hosting. Canada has kind of veered off in another direction. It's admirable what they've been able to do. And it looks like, well, no, I shouldn't say it looks like. It is now that Canada are the team that's kind of spearheading the whole thing. People say, oh, but the U.S. and Mexico. Yeah, but you know what? Canada's the team that competes against the teams outside of CONCACAF. The U.S. and Mexico beat up everybody in CONCACAF, but then they go outside and they shit their pants. Canada at least competes. Canada at least goes and fights. Canada might not win every single game. They might not beat Argentina in the semis, but damn, they're going to give them a hard time. U.S. lost to Uruguay, basically a Uruguay team that was in second or third gear for the most part. Yeah, it was a tough and battled match, but Uruguay didn't have to accelerate a whole hell of a lot. Because the onus wasn't on them. The onus was on the U.S. Now, I digress. Is the problem the culture or is the problem the coach? Because keep in mind, Gregg Berhalter wasn't the one that ends up having the U.S. out of the World Cup in 2018. So this is something that has gone on for years. The change came, but basically the same people kind of stayed in power, kind of. Because Sunil Gulati's still lurking around within FIFA. You have others that really haven't changed. You look at all the committees, it's still the same people. It's convenient at times to go and speak against the U.S. men's national team. It wasn't when they were winning. It wasn't when they were being criticized. Sometimes it ends up being convenient to talk about it because it's easy. It's always easy to speak for a cause after it's all said and done. Now, during the whole thing, that's the thing. That's the issue. Again, the problem, and people are saying, oh, Jurgen Klopp isn't going to magically solve everything. First and foremost, and I've already mentioned it on more than one occasion, Gregg Berhalter, if you include his bonuses, is somewhere along $2.2, $2.3 million a year. Jurgen Klopp in his last year at Liverpool was earning close to $50 million. 50 if you include his contract and also the advertising and all the revenue deals that he had involved in his contract with Liverpool. Of course, that money, he ends up buying his new house over in Mallorca. And to be honest with you, I'd rather be in Mallorca than coaching if I had that opportunity. Or at least be in Mallorca for a year, chill out, relax, get a nice tan, be cool, not worry about a thing, then have to worry about the pressures of having to, well, although in the U.S., there isn't really much pressure. There is pressure at Liverpool. So there's that. Now, if tomorrow they go and, Cindy Cohn ends up saying, we're willing to spend $40 million on Jurgen Klopp a year. That's a different story, man. Then the ball game completely changes. I'm like, yeah, come on board. I mean, what else can you say? But don't expect Jurgen Klopp to magically solve things, and don't expect a magical solution with a coach that earned 20, let's say 20, okay? Flat. Let's just use his coaching side. 21. He's not going to come for 90% off. Well, let's say he does come for a little bit more, 4. Still not, don't expect him to magically solve every single problem, because the problem isn't just on the pitch. The problem is what's around the game from an institutional level. And I think that's where people are kind of missing the boat. You're not going to have Pep Guardiola all of a sudden start having the U.S. men's national team play magical football, play like Barcelona in the 2000s. They don't have the players to do that. Okay? Let's be real. Now, can they find a coach that can find a system that is best suited for? Yeah, they can. Can they get better with a new coach? Yes, they can. But again, is the problem the coach or is the problem the culture? Because part of the culture is also thinking of where the team is compared to where it really is. And I think that's where many fans are missing the boat. The fans think they're up here when the reality, their potential's here. Hyping them up more. Some just watch highlights and think that's where the greatness comes from, when watching the 90 minutes would give you a better picture of many players. Many players' realities are being shown because they sit on the bench in their teams in Europe. So the culture is not around what's going on the pitch. It's also what these players do on the pitch elsewhere. I leave Pulisic out of it because he's a different story. He's an animal when he has his mind in the right place. Same thing with Tyler Adams. But that's another reality that needs to be mentioned. So all of this being said, all of these realities being put in place, it's very interesting to see where this is actually heading and where this is actually going, as my computer just shut down. All of this is part of the new reality that people have to try and accept. Now, am I saying that Gregg Berhalter is going to stay as U.S. coach? No, I'm not saying that he is. I'm not saying that he isn't. I'm just saying the reality is something that needs to be looked at in a very, very close microscope in order to understand every little single element that goes around with keeping, selecting, and changing. Okay, because all of them have to do with one another. Sorry, and I know many are going to say, you're anti-American, you're anti-this, you're anti-that, you're a hater, you always have, you have an agenda. Cool, that's no problem, man. Bring it on. But that's the reality that it is. And sometimes you have to tell people the way things are, because that is the reality that they're facing, and that's the reality that needs to be seen. Because no one has the magic solution to make the U.S. a world champion, like many think they actually would be in 2026. But that's something that they have to look at. Because can they be in the future? Yes, they could be. But as of right now, they're far, far away from that. They're about 2 tiers below a dark horse in the World Cup. So you can't go from there to becoming a world champion in less than a year. Something really drastic has to occur. And now you're getting your golden generation hitting their peak at that time. They're going to coincide at that point. What are you going to do with them? Can they play better? They can play much better. They can play a lot better. Will they? That I don't know. Because it also depends on who you bring in. Let's say Jurgen Klopp doesn't want to come, which most likely will be the case. Let's say Pep Guardiola doesn't want to come, which would most likely be the case. Who do you bring in? I mean, who do you seriously bring in? I'll bring a South American coach. I'd bring an Argentine coach. Because at least they know, or at least they'll try and understand, or at least they'll try and sympathize, or at least they'll try and say, hey, this is the way you feel as a football player, as a person, as an American, about the game. Based on how you feel, based on how all these things. Yeah, I know it sounds a little bit mystical and you know, I'm getting out into this, but you end up seeing how this team ends up playing with a coach that helps them feel the way they feel and helps them express themselves the way they want to express themselves on the pitch. Then and only then will you start finding some success. And that's just the first point. That's just the first part. There's a lot of other things that have to be done below that in order for this team to improve. And it's still a long time coming. And sadly, the development that many were looking at, keep in mind, remember, we're 2024, we're 14 years removed from Project 2010, when they're saying that the U.S. was going to become what it was supposed to be in 2026. 16 years removed from that. And nothing really's changed. Some things have improved. A lot of things have improved. But a lot of things that haven't maybe need to be looked at a little bit closer. Share it. Insult me. Do whatever you want. Make sure you leave a comment because I'd like to know exactly what you feel. For some, it at least is the truth. For some, sorry to hurt your feelings. Until next time.